Why knowledge matters.
What you said is really important, that oftentimes it's not teachers' fault. It's just one of the things that you kind of fall into. And it's the language around a school, it's a language around a district that teachers fall into, and then it kind of rewires our expectations, right? And is reflected in our language. And so what I discovered as I was doing more and more brain research is a lot of the problem is it's our amygdala. It's our amygdala's fault, right? The little piece at the bottom of the brain that's centered around strong emotion and remembering every negative thing that's ever happened to you in your life, right? That's largely its goal. And then when combined with cerebral cortex, whose job is to essentially put everything that you experience into a file drawer in your brain. And then the cerebral cortex does that a lot when you're young, right? They're creating new files all the time. As we get older, it starts stuffing those files like, oh, this kind of fits. So in it goes, in it goes. And then the thalamus's job is to pull those files when new experiences happen, make predictions as to what's going to happen based on past experiences so that we can take an infinite world of infinite possibilities and make it manageable for our brains. Where we run into problems as teachers oftentimes is the kids we remember the most with the most detail are the ones we struggled with the most. Every teacher is not going to connect with every kid. It's just not feasible. But the ones that you remember the most are the ones who caused you grief in the classroom, that you didn't get along with, you didn't connect. And usually because as teachers, we feel the urgency to connect with every kid. And so when we don't, it sticks. Um, and so when we see other students who look like that student, act like that student, talk like that student, or has the same last name, comes from the same household, as soon as we see them, our brain instantaneously says, oh, we've seen this before. Here's what's going to happen. And we start expecting less. And that's reflected in our language, right? As I was doing this research, though, I was thinking, I can't share this. This isn't very hopeful. But as we continue to do the research, the interesting thing that I discovered was in the prefrontal cortex, the storage of intentional learning sits directly abutted against what brain scientists have found is the center for optimism in our brain. So because of brain geography, when you learn something new, your center for optimism gets stimulated. So the more you learn, the more optimistic you can become. So the key for teachers is to continue to try to learn new things about the students that they serve, about their practice, and they'll become more optimistic typically. And so that's reflected in the language. So that's why we want to go from what we call limiting language, things that limit what students can do, talking about what they can't do, rather the language of possibility, what they can do, what strengths they can do, because that's going to keep you in your prefrontal cortex. That's going to keep you where intentional learning lives, where optimism lives, as opposed to what they can't do, which plays on that amygdala piece and stays in the negative. And what we found is when teachers and principals and superintendents intentionally make the shift to the language of possibility, the language of strength, they expect more. They're more optimistic. They're willing to try new things, and that's the shift that really we need to make, is get out of talking negatively and instead make the shift to talking positively.
That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com.